All right, welcome everyone. This is Our Travel Experiences. I'm your host, Kyle Rasmussen, and today I have with me Lindsay. Lindsay, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks.
Good, glad to hear it. So I'm really excited to talk about your travel experiences today. I've really enjoyed seeing your pictures of the Northeast and all the fall foliage and everything. And I know that's what your page is all about. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on it.
Cool.
So let's start out. Just kind of give the listeners and myself a bit of background on you and how you became the freelance adventurer.
Okay. Um, I started the freelance adventure as a blog, I believe in 2012, so it's been 10 years now. And the original goal of the blog was kind of twofold. One was to just document my own adventures. I was traveling a lot and I was trying a lot of new hikes here in New Hampshire, and I wanted to like keep track of those. And the other was to have a place where if I was looking for freelance writing jobs that I could kind of use that as writing examples, that because I was having a hard time finding freelance writing jobs, I would just kind of create my own blog. Um,
Mhm.
and then I originally made the Instagram as a way to hopefully funnel people to my blog. But what I've found over time is it's really the Instagram account freelance adventurer has become the main thing. Like I use those posts as like little mini blogs of, the best hikes in fall in the lakes region, or,
Mhm.
my favorite 4,000 footers or whatever. So I've found real connection to people and a community of other Northeast hikers through that Instagram account. And it's kind of funny how that became the main gig.
Yeah, it's really cool. You have quite the following there. I think it's what 30,000 followers or something like that.
Yeah, that is thanks to Reels program. Like once I started posting Reels, my photography was like amateur, lackluster at best, but like the videos and thanks to iPhone have really connected me with a wider audience.
Yeah, that's cool. Have you seen the following increase like really recently or?
Oh yeah, yeah. Since I started using Reels in like the last year and a half, it's gone from a couple thousand to the 30,000 really rapidly.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I guess what is that like, seeing that huge growth in followers?
I expected a certain I think a lot of people do, like once you have this big following, all these brands are going to reach out to you and your DMs will just be flooded, but it hasn't been like that at all. So I don't want to burst the bubble of any listeners that are hoping for Instagram fame, but I really haven't had, I probably had more offers of companies offering me gear and stuff when I had like 5,000 followers than 30. And what's interesting is it's like the same group of people that watch my stories and connect with me. I get, DMs from the same people I did 2 years ago, almost
Mhm.
daily. And it's just like other hikers and adventurers. And I have like a little group of Instagram friends that I talk with every day. And I find so much comfort in that. I love the stories feature is my favorite because then I like tell all the little adventures bit by bit. It's kind of like blogging in that way. And
Mhm.
then I get constant feedback from people like asking questions, asking for advice, giving me advice of like better places to get coffee or a trail that they really like. And so I really like the Instagram community for like the small kind of niche group that I have and have had for a couple of years. So not really big changes since getting the giant following, actually.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I would think you would get, a lot more like collaborations and companies reaching out and stuff like that. But
Honestly, I haven't though. It's strange to me too. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just keep posting my normal stuff. That's fine too.
yeah. Well, I mean, everything you're posting, I really enjoy. So
Thank you.
definitely keep doing what you're doing.
Okay.
So it sounds like you've been in New Hampshire for a while. What's uh, some of the things that you like about New Hampshire, and just what do you like about being able to explore there?
Oh yeah, I love it here. So I'm from the Pacific Northwest originally, which I believe that's where you are. Yeah.
Yep. Up in Washington State.
Okay, so I was from Oregon. I grew up in Portland, and then I went to college in San Diego. So
Me too.
I spent a lot of time, on the West Coast. Um, and then I came out after college. I have a degree in marine biology, and so I worked on commercial fishing boats here in Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts as like a government biologist. And
Wow.
I really liked it here. And I've like in my 20s, I went back and lived and worked in Oregon for a year while I was doing AmeriCorps. I went and did like experiential environmental education stuff in the mountains in California. And then I came back to Maine to get a master's in education. And I have been here ever since then. So quite a while. So that would have been, I don't know, 2000, maybe 8 or so. I've been here permanently and lived in both Maine and New Hampshire. So I live in New Hampshire, but I'm right on the Maine border. Like my daughter goes to school in Maine.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and what attracts me to it is like, I really like the smaller towns and smaller communities. I grew up in a big city suburb and then I went to college in a big city. And I just find the smaller towns here so charming. And I also love my personal location. I'm 30 minutes from Maine's beaches. I'm 30 minutes from Lake Winnipesaukee, which is this giant lakes region lake in New Hampshire. I'm about an hour from the Mountain National Forest. And one of my jobs when I moved out here to get residency to go to University of Southern Maine was as a hiking guide. And I totally fell in love with the White Mountains. And I grew up, hiking in the Cascades and the Coast Range and all that, but it's something about like it's totally different type hiking.
Oh,
And
definitely.
I could talk about it forever, but it's I really, really like it. And I can't really explain why I like it so much, but I really don't have much plans to ever go back to live on the West Coast. I am lucky enough that my family's all there, so I go and visit every year. So I feel like I get, the best of both worlds in that way.
Yeah, you get a little taste of each.
Yes.
Um, yeah, that's really cool. I think we were messaging a few weeks ago, because I went out there to that area for the first
Yeah.
time. And it was amazing to see. It's a completely different landscape from the Pacific Northwest, but it's so beautiful, and I love the little small towns and just the trees everywhere, and there's like you said, there's a lot of charm to it. Um,
Yeah.
Such a
Yeah.
great area.
Yeah. And it has like enough similarity to the Pacific Northwest that you're like, okay, these are somewhat similar vibes, like they're both very forested areas
Mhm.
and, kind of temperate climate, mountains, lakes, rivers, but then they're also quite different. Like the forests look different and the towns look different and
Yeah.
the trees look, and all that stuff. So the mountains definitely look different. Um, so it is interesting.
So, how often are you out hiking, um, on a weekly basis, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. It really does depend on the season. So my like 9 to 5 job is a school teacher. So in the summers, I'm hiking all the time, multiple times a week. Like that's what I'm doing. And if I'm not hiking, I might be, kayaking or beaching it or fishing with my kids or something, camping. So in the summer, it's pretty much outdoors all the time. And then this time of year is my absolutely favorite time, September and October. You came in to the Northeast during my favorite time of year. And so I get horrible FOMO and I just feel like I have to be hiking or I'm gonna miss out. So I have been up in the White Mountains like every weekend since Labor Day. And
Mhm.
I've just like kind of hit my wall. The whites have finally kind of dropped their leaves. So next weekend will be the first weekend I'm home and not hiking like big peaks or backpacking. So I have a lot of yard work to catch up on.
Ah,
And then in the winter, when I moved out here, I took up winter hiking, and it's just a really special kind of thing to do because the trails are not crowded anymore. Very few people, hike in winter. A lot of skiers and stuff, which I do as well. But I really do like doing so in the winter. I would say like once or twice a month. And then like we're talking, going out for hours. I do like local trails almost
mhm.
weekly as well.
Yeah, I feel like, at least from my experience, that you could spend all the time outdoors there, whether it's just in your backyard or you go on a big hike.
Yeah, my least favorite season here is spring because in like New Hampshire and Maine, we don't get spring like what people think of spring, like the tulips and daffodils, and like there's no leaves on the trees until like beginning of May. Like so you go through March and April and it's like this weird wintry mix, and I get like seasonal depression, and I really am not into hiking as much because the bugs are out, but the leaves aren't yet. So that's usually my like just begging. I have to go on a trip or something to see sunshine in March and April.
Huh, interesting. Yeah, bugs and no trees is not a good combination.
Yeah, my family in Oregon will post photos of their daffodils, and I'm like, yeah, we
Yeah,
still have 3 weeks until we get that stuff.
yeah. That's funny. Um, yeah, so I guess one of the questions I had was, is there better places to hike at certain times of the year? I know when we were messaging when I was out there,
Hmm.
I really appreciated you were sharing basically like week to week, like here's where the leaves are going to be best, and it changes from week to week and stuff like that. So I thought that was really really helpful.
Oh, good. Yeah. I'm really obsessed about finding the peak foliage in the right time, and I've made a lot of mistakes with that. Like I've made assumptions that, oh, Maine, if I go further north in Maine, they'll have the foliage, like the peak foliage before northern New Hampshire. And then it's like it's not that way. Like the Maine coast will get it after. And so I'll plan, like my Acadia National Park trip the week before my White Mountains trip. And then I'm like, dang it, I got it reversed. So it's been some trial and error. And also it's actually the peak foliage varies year to year based on the climate. So in 2020, we had a pretty extreme drought throughout New Hampshire. Well, drought for New Hampshire, not compared to like California or Arizona or
Yeah.
something. But it was listed as extreme drought. People's wells ran dry and stuff. It was scary here, but it really changed the fall foliage, and was like, I just happened to be up camping with my kids, kind of like end of September, and up in the White Mountains, which is an hour from my house. And it was suddenly peak foliage, and I was like, "What is happening? This shouldn't be here for 3 weeks." And I was able to to get this beautiful photos and hikes, but like all these people, of course it was 2020, so not as many as normal, but planned their trips. The leaves were all blown away by the time it was like, the Columbus Day weekend when we usually are in a peak foliage here. So I would say for the Northeast in general, fall is a wonderful time to come and hike. We have a pretty good summer season as well. However, my Pacific Northwest family does not like that there are so many biting insects in New Hampshire. So we have, like various insect seasons. There's like black fly season and mosquitoes. We have ticks. And so I like hiking in the fall because that's pretty much all done. I love hiking in the winter because you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And then in the spring, like I said, it can be really pretty. But we also call it mud season, bug season, and it's also called like a stick season because there's still no leaves on the trees. So the trees, which are deciduous, just look like, gray sticks everywhere. I'm not
That's funny.
selling spring in New Hampshire, but like
Yeah.
our spring would be, like late June is what you would like a
Okay.
typical picture of spring with flowers and leaves. You gotta wait till early summer really to see that.
Yeah, you got to wait a while there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. Well, I mean, uh, I was there at the end of September, um, and I'm gonna be honest. I don't remember noticing any bugs.
Yeah,
Um,
you were in a good time. Like they're gone.
yeah, yeah. It was really really pleasant. Like the weather was maybe a little bit chilly, just compared to Washington at that time.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but I thought it was awesome. I know I was probably about maybe 10 days to 2 weeks too early for the peak foliage
Mm-hmm.
for where I went. But I mean, man, the the natural beauty out there is amazing.
I think you came at a great time. Did you go up to like the northernmost part of Vermont or New Hampshire? Did you go like Dixville Notch area or anything?
So I did kind of a roundabout trip. I started in Concord and then I drove over to Vermont and drove up um, what is it, Highway 100, and then I went up to Burlington, over to
Nice.
Stowe, and then I came across and went through Franconia Notch
Yeah.
and the White Mountains. Is it the Cankamangus Highway or
Yes.
something like that?
Yeah. You got it.
Yeah, but I was just in Morocco with some people from New Hampshire, and they made sure to correct me on how I pronounced everything.
That's really funny. Yeah.
But anyways, and then I went across to Acadia and then came down the coast.
Oh, wonderful. Well, you got an awesome tour. It's like the best
Yeah,
of the best.
yeah, it was amazing. I mean, for having basically like 5 or 6 days out there, it was the way to do it, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. You seriously did.
Yeah, it'd be fun to be there like during the peak foliage season. It was insanely beautiful when I was there, but I can imagine it being that much more beautiful.
Yeah, you
During
would
peak.
hit more traffic though. So you
Yeah,
probably, it's win lose in that.
yeah. I remember talking with some of the people as I, you stayed in a hotel or stopped at whatever place, and all the locals were like, "Yep, it's we're gonna start seeing a lot more people, and there's a lot of people out and about."
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I can imagine it just being packed up here.
Yeah, Kankamangas for sure. It's just like that Columbus Day weekend. It's pretty insane.
uh, yeah, that's one of the nice things about Washington State is you can get away from all the people if you really want to.
Yes. Well,
And just
you can do that in New Hampshire as well,
yeah, you
but
just gotta go on the street.
not on those tourist routes, like not in Stowe, Burlington, and
Yeah,
Franconia. Not.
that's funny. So yeah, I guess with that, what should people know who are planning to travel to the Northeast, especially in the fall?
Especially in the fall, they have to book early. And I will say the pandemic, now that people are traveling, it's like all the locals seem to agree that it's getting worse or better, however you want to think of it, that it's just a lot more people coming here. And part of that
Mhm.
could be, social media. Like people are aware, like, oh my gosh, I've never even thought of going to, Vermont or New Hampshire or Maine in October, but that looks awesome. And then
Mhm.
another thing is like um in our local region, we are really close proximity to some big cities. And in 2020, as someone who's a Granite Stater, we saw, because New Hampshire's border was really open to tourism throughout the pandemic, like a lot of out-of-staters were like, well, the only place we can go is New Hampshire, and they have hiking. And for better or for worse, it really allowed people to, like, quote unquote discover a lot of the regions and trails here. And so I think it's a combination, but it's getting really busy. Like, my family from Oregon comes out for fall foliage season. We always get the same, like Airbnbs, and we couldn't even get ours this year, trying to get it, like 8 months ahead of time. So
Oh,
I would say if you're coming during that peak time, you really have to plan accordingly. Like, get your Airbnb or get your hotel reservation, get your car rental, and realize that it's going to be more crowded, because it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And if you're like kind of worried about that, come kind of like on that shoulder cusp, kind of like you did, like come a little bit
mhm.
earlier, come in September. It's like September is the golden month. I'm like a school teacher, and I wish my summer vacation was like August, September, because like you probably experienced, the bugs are gone. There's really not that much. The temperature's pretty nice. It's not super humid anymore.
Mhm.
And there's far less people on the trails. So I think, like, kind of keep that in mind. And then, use a various online tracker, or follow me, Freelance Adventurer, to find
Yes.
out, the right times for your peak foliage. Because, like I said, you don't want to. I had a friend who was like, okay, I'm going to do, like Quebec, and then I'm going to do Maine, and then I'm going to do New Hampshire, and then Vermont. I'm like, no, 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 you're going backwards. Like, you want to do Vermont, and then New Hampshire, and then Maine, and then Quebec, if you want to chase the foliage. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I think you might have posted it. I didn't realize that there's trackers for the foliage.
Yeah.
That was an interesting discovery for me.
People are interested. There's like, this year I noticed the Instagram account. I don't know who's running it, but it's just about NH foliage. And I was like, alrighty, I'm here for it. Like, let's see.
That's
It's a
funny.
thing.
Well, what's been some of your favorite hikes up there?
Um, so here in New Hampshire, we have like various regions. I have, my favorites kind of in all these regions. The White Mountains is an area that I'm an expert in. I was a hiking and wilderness guide for the Appalachian Mountain Club there for 6 seasons. So I've spent a lot of time backpacking, exploring the trails, camping, in that area. So there's some peaks that I love and I go back to all the time. And a lot of those are what we call the 4,000 footers. So I know that sounds super small to someone. Oh no,
To a
can you
West
hear me?
Coaster, yes. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, my phone went dead for a second. Okay. It sounds super small to a West Coaster that we would have 4,000 footers as our big peaks. And that is what I thought when I first moved out here. But it's, you're starting from near sea level. So if
Mhm.
you're going up to, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 feet, it's a pretty big climb. Um, and our trails don't have switchbacks, so it's climbing up rocks straight up usually. Anyway, I digress. Some of my favorite trails are these 4,000 footers, and I would say at the moment, Mount Pierce has always been one of my favorites. You take the Crawford Path, which is like, I might quote this wrong, but it's like the oldest continuously hiked trail in America.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of fun, historic, and it's a really nice trail. It's one of the more accessible 4,000 footers. And it's part of the presidentials, which includes Mount Washington, our highest peak. I generally don't put Mount Washington on my list because you can drive up or take a train.
Mhm.
And so I find it slightly annoying when I work my butt off all day hiking, and then I get to the top and there's people in, like flip flops eating cheesy fries. And
Yeah.
so, but I have a lot of friends that absolutely love Mount Washington. It's their favorite. It's a really gnarly hike. Whichever way you go, there's no easy way. So I would say Mount Pierce, Franconia Ridge. You drove through Franconia Notch. The ridge um, including Lafayette, Lincoln, Little Haystack, Liberty. These peaks are just really amazing views of the Pemigewasset Wilderness, and I love that ridgeline. Let me think. Yeah, that's probably pretty good. Oh, there's this other list that I kind of started really plugging away at early in the pandemic called the 52 with a View, where it's 52 hikes that are under 4,000 feet, but they all have a view. And I'm loving those because as a mom, I don't necessarily want to be gone all day. So I can
Mhm.
go do one of these hikes as a half day. It's like 5 miles instead of 10.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying that list as well. And then my other hiking favorites lately have been in the lakes region of New Hampshire. There's small mountain ranges that surround these lakes. And another kind of pandemic project was to knock out a list of the Belknap mountain range. And you can hike the whole ridge. Some people even do it in a day, but I did it all as separate day hikes. Um, and they're, like 5 to 10 miles, maybe even shorter for some, to do them. And they're, you know, lower elevation, 2,000 feet, so maybe you're gaining 1,500 feet. But they're beautiful views because it's just like lakes and like rolling green hills all around. So
Oh man,
those are my faves at the moment.
those all sound amazing. Uh, the little bit of hiking that I got to do out there was awesome, and I
Good.
could see that there's a lot of great spots where you can go out there
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
and I get stuck kind of going, I'm like one of those people. I go to the restaurant, I always order the same thing, and I tend to do that with my hiking too because I'm like I know I'm gonna love it,
Yeah.
but I have been trying lately to kind of push myself into doing some ones that I've been putting off because I'm like, I know the view's not going to be that great, but everybody does this hike, and so I did one last weekend that I was like, I'll never do that hike. It's called Owl's Head. And I was like, oh, I'm never going to do it. It's like, I don't know, an 18-mile day if you do it as a day hike. And I was like, no, I don't want to. And then I was like, you know what? I'll do it as overnight. That actually sounds really lovely, a fall overnight. And it was. I like really enjoyed it. It's like one of my favorite hikes of the year. So I'm trying to be more open minded and kind of do the ones I wasn't that interested in.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you do much overnight hiking, backpacking?
I used to do it a lot because it was my job. So a lot of my expertise of the White Mountains has to do with like I was literally paid to take people through the White Mountains
Hmm.
on, like let's go up the AT for a week and a half, the Appalachian Trail, or let's go into this remote area and I'll take a group of teens backpacking for 7 days. And so yes. And then when I had kids, I started taking, I took a break when I had babies. But now they're older. They're well older for me. They're age 4 and 6. And so it's easier to leave them with my husband or a relative. And I've been doing a lot of like 1 or 2 night backpacks. So I think I've done 4 or 5 since June.
Okay. Yeah. So do your kids come with you pretty frequently?
They do. They are great little hikers, but they are 4 and 6. When my son was a baby, like his first year of life, he spent a lot of time in one of those hiking packs.
Hmm.
And I took him everywhere. He was really good in the pack. He did the 4,000 footers and all sorts of all day hikes and stuff, lots of camping. Excuse me. And but when I had two, because I had two kids under 2 years old together, I couldn't really carry them both. And I have the summers off, but my husband does not. And so I kind of started doing smaller stuff, but they are great. They do all the local hikes with me. We hike, local trails, 1 milers kind of thing, probably about once a week and more in the summer. This past weekend, I took them up to the White Mountains. I was really proud of my 4-year-old. She did about 3 miles and 800 feet of elevation gain,
Oh,
no
wow.
whining. She was just rock star. So they do hike a lot, probably much more than the normal American child.
Yeah. Do they like being out there?
Yeah, they do. I mean, like, they're regular kids, so if I give them a choice of watching TV all day or going for a hike, they'll probably pick the TV.
Yeah.
But if it's like, it's part of our family's activities. So,
Mhm.
while some families might watch football together, like we go hiking, right?
Yeah. I'm sure that's a good bonding experience.
Yeah, and it's like it's really good. I am distracted at home because I have laundry to do or yard work or I have to catch up on work on my computer. But if we're hiking, like that's when I have really great conversations with my kids, right? Because I get
Mhm.
to know them better because there's no distractions except for nature.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. Do you see a lot of wildlife while you're out there?
A little bit. When I'm with my kids, not as much because they're loud. But like, this summer up in the White Mountains, I saw a moose once. That was really exciting. You see a lot of, I don't know, you probably saw turkeys while you were out here. They're everywhere. See turkeys and squirrels. The little trails near my house, I see things like fox, and lots of great birds. I haven't seen a bear in a long time. When I worked as a guide, I saw bears, especially up in Maine. But I don't think I've seen a bear for like 3 years.
Oh wow.
And we don't have really, I mean, that's another thing of being really spoiled here in the Northeast. We don't really have really quote unquote dangerous wildlife. So even our bears, they're really scaredy cats. I'm more scared of the moose than I'm of the
Mhm.
bears because like the moose, if I startle one and I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna trample me. But all my interactions with bears have been like, go away, bear, and then they just are like, meh, and they run away. Um, so yeah, I feel it's a pretty safe place to hike, and we don't really have like a lot of venomous things and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's the one thing, at least kind of around the area that I'm at, where rattlesnakes are definitely a thing.
Right. Yeah, when I lived in the Southwest, that was a thing because I ran trips in the San Gabriel Mountains and stuff, and even when I lived in San
Mhm.
Diego, like there's some spiders and snakes that
Yeah.
are a little scary. And like the town I lived in um California, Wrightwood had like mountain lions, and
Mhm.
that was a little that once in a while one would take somebody's dog or something. So um yeah, a little spoiled that New Hampshire has really great wildlife but nothing too dangerous.
Yeah, that's nice. Not to change the subject here, but when you were in San Diego, did you get up to Julian and hike around
Oh
that area?
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
And
I
pie.
yeah, I loved hiking up in that area. There's some really pretty views.
I would love to go back because I was not a big hiker in college. So I that was not like a quote unquote pastime. I came from like a hiking family, but I went to college and I was like, San Diego, this is about the beaches,
Yeah.
and so I spent a lot of time at the beach. And my extracurriculars did not revolve around hiking at all in college. But like my friends and I would go up to Julian and go apple picking and stuff, but I actually
Mhm.
didn't hike up there that often.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's really pretty. I think especially in the fall too.
I
Uh,
bet.
yeah, I would do some trips up there where I'd just hike in the morning and then go down to Julian and do all the fall stuff down there. Um, it was always a fun time.
That
But
sounds great. Yeah. I have friends still in San Diego and LA area, and I think they go up there for apple picking and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah, good spot. So okay, going back to the Northeast here. Um, sorry, I love San Diego, so I always like having an opportunity to talk about it.
Oh, well,
Um,
it's a great city.
it is, it is. Um, but you wrote a book about was it Seacoast hikes? Is
Yeah.
that right? Okay. So tell me about that. How'd that come about?
So that's a pandemic project. When everything kind of shut down, we were encouraged to kind of, like everybody else, stay in your area. So
Mm-hmm.
the White Mountains, where I usually go, is like an hour drive. And I was like, I don't need to get in the car and drive an hour. And also, I had really little kids at that time. So this was a few years ago. So, like 1 and 3. And it's
Yeah.
just, it wasn't the best choice. Like, why am I driving an hour, hour and a half with kids who don't like being in the car to do a hike that is too much for them anyway? So it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of, I was like, well, I still want to hike. I'll start just finding trails here. And even though there are trail systems literally everywhere by my house on the seacoast, I never explored them because I was like, well, that's not a real hike. It's like flat, whatever. Like, it's not a peak.
Yeah.
And that was dumb of me because like there were so many amazing trails. We have a lot of regional land trusts. So people will donate their property to these land trusts, and these nonprofits will just put trail systems in for people to use for recreation. Most of them are hiking, but there's also, four-wheeling, snowmobiling, hunting, fishing, camping, all this. So they're all over the place, and a lot of towns each have their own. So I started just like using All Trails and these land trust websites. I mean, like, okay, let's try this trail today. And I realized like every day, or every other day, I was hiking a lot, I could find a trail that was like a mile or maybe even more, that was within 10 to 15 minutes of my house, and I was not running out of hikes. And it was pretty cool. And so I started like curating this separate Instagram that's called Seacoast Hikes, where I would report out. So I was like, okay, what would other kind of similar moms or families or retired folk or whatever, dog walkers, want to know? They'd want to know that where it is. They'd want some photos of it, maybe a short video. So I use Reels so that you can kind of like eyeball it. Because if you're going to take a kid, you're kind of nervous. Like, is it going to
Mm-hmm.
be safe? What is it going to look like? I put if there's a bathroom, if it's dog friendly, if it's free parking, all these kind of things in the caption, and made this curated account. And then my dad is a writer, and he was like, you should make that into a book. And I was like, Dad, I don't have like the energy to do, like, I'd need 50 hikes in there. And he's like, don't do 50, just do 10. I was like, oh, well, I can do 10. Like, that's like 10 blogs, that's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote this very short book. I published it through my own company, Freelance Adventurer. And I have like a distributor that distributes it for me. So, it's an ebook. It's meant to be on your phone, so that like if you're looking for a hike, you're like, oh, I'll go do this Stonehouse Pond. What's that? And we'll have driving directions, very detailed trail descriptions, images of what the trail sign looks like. So you'll find it recognizable, parking, all that sort of info, and recommendations, when to hike it, when's mud season, when, if you can bring your dogs, stuff like that. So it's had a really good reception, and that Seacoast Hikes Instagram also is doing really well. It has like 5,000 followers. I
Oh wow.
post little hikes on it, when I go, in the summer, it might be weekly, but right now, I'm spending more time up north, so I haven't posted in a while. But it's a really, I feel like the Instagram and the book are just a nice little give back to the community. So it's like something that I wish I had had earlier on. So I was like, I'll just make it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super cool. I'm looking at it here on Amazon right now.
Yeah, and I'm planning, like, the plan was to put out a new volume every year. So my year anniversary was June 2022. I wasn't able to get the second volume because I've been writing a lot for other publications. But I still plan on putting out multiple volumes of that series.
Yeah, that's awesome. What
Yeah.
was that process like, putting that book together?
The writing part, because I am a writer, and I've been a blogger a really long time, wasn't too hard. I was able to hire people to help me edit it. The hardest part was turning it into a special kind of learning how to make a digital document that could be used on an e-reader. It's like a very techy and took a lot of, not a lot, but took training, and I wasn't like super engaged, and I'm like, ugh, I have to do this. So it was like you write the whole thing and you can't just like upload it to the internet. It has to be formatted a certain way, you know, like every little space, every little indent, because if it goes on a Barnes and Noble versus Amazon versus Apple Books, you know, these all, it
Mhm.
has to be readable in all of these. It's not like a PDF that you just scroll through. It's a live document that you can highlight and have hyperlinks and all this stuff. So that process was interesting but tedious. The
Yeah.
writing for me was really fun. The researching was really fun. You know, I had to go and do those hikes over and over and over to get all the little mileage. You know, at point 2, you'll turn
Oh
left
gosh.
onto the red trail and hike, you know, point 0.3 miles, and at the red tree turn, you know, and so
Yeah.
it took a lot of research, but that was really fun. It was that kind of like tedious techie stuff to me that was not very enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm sure it's getting it all perfect for each type of platform is a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm like, now that it's been like a year and a half, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm gonna have to go through that whole learning process again. I don't think I'm gonna remember it.
Yeah. Yeah, I not to plug my stuff, but I got a book coming out in December, and kind of the same thing. Like, it was easy to get all of the ideas on the paper,
Yeah.
but then making it like look nice and going through all the stuff after the writing has been a lot.
Is your book an ebook?
It will be.
Yeah.
I am doing it through a publishing company. I have a contract with a company
Oh,
in
very cool.
Pennsylvania, and so they're supposed to be doing that for me.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll see.
Good, good.
Everything's just about done, and it's supposed to go to print in like mid-November. Um, so we'll see. But yeah, it's been an interesting process to say the least.
Congratulations. What's your book called?
Travel Tips is the main title, and I believe it's going to be on Amazon and all of that. So
Awesome. Well, yeah, plug away. That sounds great.
yeah, I just wanted to be here because it's been a long process to make happen.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, the benefit of only having like 10 hikes in my book, it was pretty short.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, awesome. I mean, that's really cool. I like meeting other writers and hearing their stories and their journeys. It's really inspiring to see, and I'm excited to read your book now. So
Yeah.
um,
Thanks.
yeah. Well, Lindsay, is there any other anything else that you want to share with the listeners in terms of your writing or hiking or just the Northeast in general?
No, I think like one of the things, like I said, that I've loved about my journey through blogging, writing, content creation is this connection to community. And so, especially now, like I said, I have like a larger following, and as it grows, I was always like intimidated to reach out to people to ask them hiking advice or about a trail they did. Um, but like my DMs don't really get that much, and I like really enjoy it. So I would
Mhm.
say to listeners, like if you're in my area, like you can reach out and like ask for a favorite trail, or like I'm looking for, I love when people are like, hey, I want a 5-mile loop that's within an hour of Manchester, or I'm like, what's the best beach to take my kid to in Maine. So I live for that stuff. So don't be afraid to reach out to me or other, creators, because we're making that content for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's really fun to connect. My original plan was to be a blogger, right? And like have these blogs and to kind of dispense this information and kind of create a usable resource for people. And I think like I still do that on my blog, but I get, paid gigs for magazines. So that kind of takes up my writing time. But my Instagram now is this like community, like real life, like, oh, people are asking me about my favorite water filter. I'll just do a reel about that, or I'll put that in my stories. And, it's like this like kind of living document of outdoor resource. So I would say like, I'd like to leave listeners with like, reach out and say hi.
Yeah.
And ask if you have a question.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know I reached out to you asking about the Northeast when I was heading out there, and I really appreciated the advice you gave me. And now, next time I go out there, I'll definitely have more detailed questions and, where's the best place to hike and that sort of thing.
Awesome.
So I really appreciate that.
Cool.
Well, awesome. Well, I guess really quick, where can people find you?
On Instagram at Freelance Adventurer. I also am on TikTok, Freelance Adventurer. I'm also on Facebook, The Freelance Adventurer. And then all of those have, like links in bio to my blog, to my writings for Field and Stream, to my writings for Seacoast Mom, to my book, and so on.
Yep. I checked out the link in your Instagram. It took me right to everything. So it was
awesome.
Really well, Lindsay, thank you so much for taking the time. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I really appreciate all the insight into the Northeast.
Awesome. It was great talking to you, Kyle.
Yeah, well, I hope you have a great evening, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere around the world soon.
Me too.
All right, have a good one. Hey everybody, Kyle here. If you enjoyed today's show and want more, you can always check out every episode on Spotify, Anchor, YouTube, and now Amazon Music as well. Just search for Our Travel Experiences on any of those platforms and it will pop up. You can also find everything all in one place on my website, ourtravelexp.com. And if you want to see my travel pictures as well as travel pictures from guests on the show, you can check them out on Instagram. The page is called Our Travel Experiences Podcast. And if you want to share your own pictures on the Instagram page or be a guest on the podcast, you can message me via that Instagram page or email me at ourtravelexperiences@outlook.com. I would love to see your pictures and hear about your travel experiences, so please send them my way. And if that isn't enough for you, make sure to check out my weekly YouTube show, From Around the World Fridays. Every Friday, I'm taking 5 to 10 minutes to answer questions from listeners, share some souvenirs that I bought over the years, share my postcards over the years that I've accumulated, or share videos and pictures from one particular city or country that I visited, and so much more. So check it out, guys. You won't be disappointed. And make sure you go subscribe to that as well. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you somewhere around the world soon.